Great. Then it's my pleasure to introduce this last tutorial session of the conference, where we will have a nice tutorial by the team from JSI from Slovenia. Specifically, we have here Gjorgjina and Tome, who will be talking to us about advances in meta features for single objective black box optimization. And Gjorgjina, the floor is yours.
Okay, so as you probably noticed from the title, this tutorial won't exactly be on the topic of AUTOML, but we are talking about single objective optimization. And so, without saying, the reason we decided to present this tutorial anyway is because we have been kind of observing the work that is being done in the AUTOML community, and we have seen that there are some tasks which are similar with the problems that we are dealing, and that there are methodologies that can be taken from one domain and adapted to the other. So we thought it might be a good idea to give you an introduction into the work that is being done in our field, so that we can maybe establish some ideas or how to transfer things, or maybe collaborate on some topics. So I will just briefly give the definition of what exactly we are dealing with, because some of you are not familiar probably. So when we're talking about single objective optimization, we are talking about minimizing or maximizing some function, which in our case is just the mapping from the domain of real numbers to the domain of real numbers. And for notation purposes, we'll be using x to denote the input parameters to this function, or we'll also refer to them as candidate solutions. And epsilon is the objective function value, which we want to minimize or maximize. And in this case, because we are talking about single objective optimization, we have only one target to minimize. And the most interesting topic for us in this case is algorithm selection. So this is the task of finding one algorithm which is suitable to solve a given optimization problem from an available pool of algorithms. And the idea here is that instead of trying to develop one new algorithm which will somehow magically work best across all problems, we want to leverage the strengths of multiple algorithms which perform well in different types of problem, and then have like a machine learning model to coordinate which algorithm which will be used where. So in the way we are typically establishing our experiments or this algorithm selection pipeline is in several steps. So we have first the problem portfolio, or this is also called the benchmark. It is the set of problems that we are considering for which we want to find an optimal algorithm. So in our case, some problems are like the sphere or ellipsoid or a stringing function. And then we have the algorithm portfolio, or the set of algorithms from which we want to choose the most suitable one to solve a given problem. So some examples include differential evolution, particle swarm optimization, etc. Then the first step is to actually obtain performance data for each problem. And we do this by running the algorithm on a given problem and somehow measuring its performance. And then what we want to do is we want to train a machine learning model which, given some representation of a problem, which will predict the performance of different algorithms for this problem, so that you can then choose which is the best one for that particular problem. And kind of a requirement for training this machine learning model is obviously representing the optimization problems in terms of numerical features, which can be used by the machine learning model. And this is exactly the topic that we'll be discussing today. So how to do this representation of an optimization problem in a vector space. And basically, when we are doing algorithm selection, there are different types of questions that we need to decide upon during our experimental setup. So first question is what types of problems we will be including in the problem portfolio. Then we have to obviously also select the set of algorithms from which we will be choosing there is the question of the feature representation, which we'll be focusing on today, and the choice of the machine learning models for the algorithm selector. And today, as I said, we will be going into the feature representations, and we'll be kind of partitioning the tutorial into three main parts. So we have the problem features, the algorithm features, and the problem algorithm or trajectory features. And I will be covering the first one, then Tome will take over. So before I go into the problem features, I also just want to give you some introduction into the types of resources we have available for doing this machine learning model. So for the problem portfolios, the most common choice of benchmark has been the BBOB. And this benchmark has been developed even 20 years ago. And it has been used as the main choice of problem portfolio for years. And it essentially contains like 24 problem classes from which you can generate different instances by performing some transformation to the original problem, such as shifting or scaling. And kind of the problem that we are usually observing with this is that the instances generated are not that diverse. And then I will also mention kind of how we typically evaluate the features. So there is the task of predicting high-level properties of a problem. So this refers to like if the problem has multiple local optima or it's multimodal, if we can separate it into more simpler problems, which can be solved separately, etc. Then you can use this feature for comparing problems with one another, or this is also sometimes called the problem classification task, where you want to determine to which class a problem belongs to. And then finally, we have algorithm selection. So now I will give the third part dedicated to the problem features, and the kind of three subgroups of features we have are the exploratory landscape analysis features, the topological ones, and features based on deep learning. So first of all, how do you characterize the black box function? So if you can see this function, it's kind of easy to tell that you have just one global optimum, and this is kind of the simplest case. This is a sphere function, and just by observing it, maybe you can kind of describe it. But the problem is this is a function in 2D. If it's a function in 20, 30 dimension, you cannot even visualize it, you cannot see it. And the other problem is you have a black box on top, so you don't actually know how this function looks like. So what people have been doing to describe this function is to kind of poke holes into this black box. So this poking holes means just sampling the function. So what you do is you construct some sample of points. You can sample them using different techniques. So for example, random sampling or Sobel sampling or Latin hypercube sampling. And then you kind of just evaluate this function on the set of points, and you obtain the objective function values. And then you kind of have this matrix of candidate solutions to the function, which you use for calculating features. So the problem features, which I will be describing now, are all based on kind of this matrix. So they are based on a static sample of the function. And the first larger group of features which have been used and generated for decades are the exploratory landscape analysis features, or ELA. And here I should just give a disclaimer that these figures are just meant to kind of give an intuition of what the features are doing, and they're not always an exact implementation. And another disclaimer is that I will be explaining just the most simpler features and the ones that are more intuitive and easier to understand. So the first group of feature is the complexity features. So these features aim to capture whether the function is kind of convex, concave, or more linear. And essentially what these features do is they kind of sample a pair of points from the function. In this case, we have the black points, which are kind of randomly sampled. And then what you do is you take a linear combination of them and see whether essentially how far the actual value of the function, so the red point, is from this middle point, which you get if you assume that the function is linear. So the greater the difference between these points, the greater, this is kind of an indicator that the function is not linear in that range. Then you have distribution features, which essentially take a look at the distribution of objective function values and measure some properties of it, such as the skewness and kurtosis, and also like numbers of peaks, etc. Then you have local search features, which actually run a local search algorithm and kind of perform post-hoc clustering of the obtained solutions, which are investigated by the algorithms. And the kind of information that this is supposed to capture is like the number of clusters can give you some indication of whether this function has just one global optimal or multiple local ones, while the size of the cluster can tell you how large are these basins of attractions within the function. Then you also have like cell mapping features, which essentially partition the search space into this kind of grid of squares, where the idea is to compare the objective function values of neighboring cells and to assign some probability of transitioning from one cell to another. So in this example, we have like the sphere function, and this is the most simplest case where we have just one essentially cell where all of the transitions are going into. So you have as features, for example, that the number of periodic cells, or these are cells where the transitions are kind of going into, is just 4% of all cells, and the rest of them are transient. So that's kind of what kind of features you can expect to see. And then we have like angle features, which actually look at the angle between the best and worst solutions within a single cell. So here, for example, this is the angle between the best and worst solution, and this is supposed to give an indication of the trend within a cell. And then also, if you compare some neighboring cells, you can make conclusions on whether the function is convex or concave in kind of this region. And then there are other ELA feature groups, which I won't be explaining in detail, but for example, there are the level set features, which are splitting the samples into two classes based on some threshold of the objective function. And then different kinds of models are fitted to this data, and their performance values or accuracies are used as features. So, for example, there are some models, for example, if the model is linear, it will have a kind of high error rates for a multimodal function, but other models might do better there. So based on how well these models are working, you can tell something about the function. And there are other features such as meta model features, which also again fit in this case regression models and use some coefficients of the models and its accuracy, and you have curvature features, and I mean there are other feature groups, but we won't be explaining everything into detail. The nice things about these features is that they're available in Python and R libraries, which are named Flaco, and also there is a graphical user interface where you can kind of play around with these features, visualize different functions, see what their ELA features look like, etc. And then ELA features have kind of been developed for more than 15 years, probably more. But from now on, I'll be explaining kind of the newer features that came out in the last couple of years. And one type of features are the topological landscape analysis features, which are essentially using concepts from topological data analysis to represent the functions using some techniques of capturing structures in point clouds. And I'll just give some intuition with practical examples. So here we have, for example, this is called a point cloud of 4 points, and the idea of the topological landscape analysis feature is to kind of look at what structures are appearing within the point cloud at different kind of distance radiuses, and how this structure persists. So, for example, in this case, we have at epsilon 0, there are no connections in the point cloud, but then at epsilon 1, there is an edge forming between these 2 points. Then at epsilon 0, this radius is actually 0. So there is a triangle formed here, and the methodology is kind of capturing when each of these structures, so the edge and the triangle, are appearing. And when you do that, you're essentially capturing structures that appear within the point cloud. And we are especially interested in structures that live for a long time. That means that their birth has a low value, but death has a high value. So we're looking for structures that are centered here. And this is kind of what you get when you take an input point cloud and you're describing it. First of all, with this, this is called a persistence diagram. So it describes when each of these point or structure is born and when it dies. So essentially, the topological landscape analysis features are meant to kind of capture poles in this point cloud. So this function has a big pole here. That's why we have like a white region here and some structures appearing here. And here we have 2 poles, so we have 2 structures that persist across time, and these are actually the holes in the point cloud. So the actual features here are just the pixels in this image. Then we are going into the deep learning based features. And I think one of the first ones that appeared were the fitness map features. So here the idea is to represent optimization problems kind of as images. So what you would do, for example, if you have a 2-dimensional problem, this is 1 dimension, this is the 2nd dimension, and then you have the points inside, and the color of the points reflects their objective function value. So it's just a grayscale image representation of a 2-dimensional problem. And the idea is here then to train a deep learning model to predict algorithm performance based on this image. And in this case, they're using the ShuffleNet version 2 network and tuning it to predict performance of 32 configurations of the covariance metric adaptation evolutionary strategy algorithm. And they're again using this BBOB benchmark to do this. So one obvious limitation of such an approach is that you can do this for 2D problems, but as problems grow in dimension, we cannot anymore describe them in a 2D image, obviously. So what has been done to kind of mediate this is they try to use dimensionality reduction techniques such as PCA to essentially reduce the candidate solutions or X values into 2 dimensions. And sometimes they're also including the objective function values. And the other option is to, instead of kind of having one image represent the optimization problem, you'd kind of do all pairwise comparisons of the dimensions. So, for example, if you have a 3-dimensional problem, you would have one image for dimension 1 and 2, then another one for 2 and 3, then a third one for 1 and 3. And you would basically stack these images in the convolutional network. So the same way in computer vision, you have stacks of RGB values for an image, you would have different images for different combinations of the input features. So that kind of works to some degree, but there are again problems with dimensionality. So we have since moved to exploring transformer models for this case, and the first study that did this was this paper where they explored point cloud transformers, where they modified the general point cloud transformers to operate on the node of a K-NN graph. And the idea behind this is that transformers are usually good at capturing global structure, but in this case, they said that they wanted to incorporate the local neighborhoods around each sample into the projection of the transformer model. And then there are also features that are based on autoencoders. So again, the way this works is you generate candidate solutions using some sampling technique, and then just you take the objective function values. So we have a single vector. You scale this and you input it into a variational autoencoder to learn a representation for each function. And then you can basically use the trained autoencoder to produce embeddings for different functions. And this has been tested for predicting high-level properties of the BBOB problems, such as multimodality, global structure, final structure, etc. And these are some nice visualizations that they got. So in this case, what they're doing is they're taking a function from the BBOB benchmark, and then they're finding the most similar function to it that can be generated with one random function generator. So for example, this one, let's see that based on the representations produced by the autoencoder, they were able to find a function that is similar to it, that is generated by the random function generator. And the main idea behind this was that you could potentially use such an autoencoder to find kind of a cheap to evaluate replacement function for your optimization problem, so that instead of performing algorithm selection for the expensive problem, you would do it for the cheaper one. And they're also able to show how this autoencoder works by essentially performing some perturbations on the learned embedding for each function. So, for example, for this case, we're taking one function, you're producing through the autoencoder its embedding, and then you make small modifications to this embedding, pass it through the decoder, and then you're getting another similar function. And then there are transoptas features. In this case, what we have done is we are training a transformer model to do algorithm performance directly, algorithm performance prediction. And the way this works is we take the same metrics that you saw before, that is sampled using some Latin hypercube sampling or something. And then you input it into the encoder layer of a transformer model. And on top, you have just one regression hat, which predicts algorithm performance. So in this way, you're training features which are specific to an algorithm portfolio. So the learned representation is dependent on the algorithms for which you are predicting performance. And there are finally the deep ELA features, which are also transformer-based, but they're trained in a self-supervised manner. So the goal here is to train the model in such a way that it will produce similar embeddings for similar function, which are not sensitive to some problem transformations. And the way this is done is you're essentially providing an original problem to the model and some transformed variant, and the model is supposed to learn a similar representation for functions which come from the original problem functions, but have different transformations applied to them, and then different embeddings for different problems. So this has been tested also for predicting these high-level properties of VBFD problems, also for algorithm selection, and they're also working on extending this model so it works on multi-objective problems and it handles different problem dimensions. And then some applications of such features are, apart from algorithm selection, we can use it to analyze benchmarks. So in this case, what we have used them for is the selection of a diverse benchmark, which contains problems which are kind of non-redundant and representative of real-world problems. So the intuition behind this is that you have all of these benchmarks, and we are commonly using them to evaluate algorithm performance. But there is essentially bias in these benchmarks. They have problems of certain types that are oversaturated and some that are undersaturated. So what happens, for example, here you have a visualization of the problems that we are typically using in a single objective optimization. And if you represent these problems using this problem landscape features, what you can get the vector representation, and then if you compare how similar these problems are to one another, I would say we can use these problem features to analyze our benchmarks and figure out if they are biased to a certain type of data. And what we have done here is we took all of the problem instances from the most commonly used benchmarks in single objective optimization. We have then represented them using this problem landscape features, and then we are performing analysis on top of these vectors that we obtain for each problem. In this picture, you can see a graph representing all of the problems that we have in our portfolios, and the problems are connected if they're similar. So if the cosine similarity of their representations exceeds a certain threshold. And what you can see here is that when we do this, there's this huge connected component. That means that there's a lot of problems which are similar to each other, and then there are some unique ones that are not similar to anything else. So what happens if you evaluate an algorithm on a graph that looks like this? Essentially, the algorithm that performs well on this type of problem will be considered the best. And then if you have in your testing set a bunch of problems that lie in this region, essentially the algorithm will not perform well on that. So in order to kind of get a fair evaluation of algorithms, you hopefully want your algorithms to be well performing on the highest amount of representative function. This is the key. So, for example, what this methodology kind of does is it takes a subset of your existing set of data instances and selects only the ones that are representative and non-redundant. What it means is that from this big component, it will just grab one instance, and then it will include all of these instances which are not similar to anything else. So then when you evaluate algorithms on such a subset, you probably get algorithms that are performing well on the most highest amount of diverse points. And then you get a fair comparison of algorithms. And then we're obviously using this for algorithm selection. So I have already explained this process essentially, how it goes is doing sampling, feature computation, and then you're training a machine learning model so that when a new problem instance comes, you can you can use the machine learning model, which will choose the best algorithm. And also what you can do on top of that is kind of include explainability. So we're calling this the explainable algorithm footprint. So the basic idea is that you can identify which algorithm on what kind of problem instances it is doing well and on what kind of problem instances it is failing. And there are two dimensions to this. So you can look at the performance of the optimization algorithm. So you can find problem instances for which the optimization algorithm is failing to find a good solution or it's doing very well on some. And then you can, the other dimension is looking at the machine learning model. So you can find problem instances for which the model can accurately predict the performance of the optimization algorithm and some where it cannot. And then the idea of these footprints is that you can also relate this to properties of the problem. So you can say problems with this property are difficult to solve for that optimization algorithm, and then they're easy for another, or you can say machine learning model can predict well for this type of problem instances, but for others it can. Good that Tome is taking over because I don't see her.
So thanks, Gina. So maybe just like for a brief summary. So think about like these are meta features that can describe the problem instances. So why they are important? They are important when we heard a lot about topics. We have problems with benchmarks. So like posters, right? We need to have new benchmarks, or we have like a new repository of like benchmark results. But how this benchmark is actually representative, right? We need to have diversity, then we don't have generalization. So if you want to do instance analysis and you want to see like the diversity first before you make your experimental design, which data sets, with problem optimization algorithms will be done there. So first you need to do instance-based analysis in your feature space. So all these features Gjorgjina mentioned, like based on deep learning, killer feature, topological landscape analysis features, is actually how to make a characterization of a problem optimization function that further can help you to do like this kind of diversity. So you see selector, which of them we need to select to do statistical analysis, right? There are like some papers that are dealing with statistics, but all these models, no matter if you're using Friedman test or the novel approach which is proposed on those posters, they are all affected by the data. So the idea is like how actually to minimize this kind of inherent bias which is presented in your data, and those features can help you a lot. And now the ILA feature, which is the most commonly used, is actually they have been done like to be related to the high-level properties of the problems, but then we start utilizing them in algorithm selection, but they are static features, right? Those static features, what that means that they are handling like the entire like search space of the function. But when we run algorithm, the algorithm are just jumping from different paths, so they are not seeing the entire search space. So this kind of feature are really nice to make diversity between the instances. Think about data set in the feature space, and they are not related to the target of the algorithm. So what is the performance of an algorithm which is done? Some of the supervised approaches, like deep learning approaches, They are coming with the cost because you are training them in algorithm selection or problem selection. So for example, these transformer features, when you are putting like the metrics to a transformer and then your task is algorithm selection, and then if you put the same metrics and then your transformer is doing problem classification, the latent spaces, the representations, the features are completely different because they are learning in supervised fashion. So you can think about all these things, like in NLP, we have thousands of different sentence embedding, which we try to tell in which approach. In our case, like YILA features, they provide like some good results, but they are still struggling because for some problem instances, you can have the same YILA features, but the performance of the algorithm is completely different. So they know they didn't correlate well with the performance of the algorithm which is coming there. But now think about, Gina said at the beginning, what is the problem? It's like even in machine learning, we have a lot of algorithms. We don't know which one to select. So we need to do algorithm selection for nuancing problems. And then we need to select like problem functions. Okay, we have the problem landscape features. We can make this diversity. But from other side, like we are pretty much dependent from the algorithm portfolio. Which algorithms create our algorithm portfolio from which we can choose the best alternative, right? And now we come with something okay, but we need to features that describe actually the performance of the algorithm. So these are the algorithm features, because if we reduce the bias which is in the feature space, we need to reduce the bias in the target space in order to show that our algorithm selection actually works and we have gain. And then we need to have these complementary algorithms. So there are some algorithm features now. I think we are talking about some performance space now. We are not interested in the characteristic of the algorithms, maybe some like, high level characteristics, but then we are not taking care about the interactions, the trajectories of the algorithms. So when we speak about algorithm features, we have based on source code, based on performance, based on Shapley values for performance predictive model, and also like via knowledge graph. And first, let's start with, wrong computer. So first, let's start with the source code. So these features were actually presented for automated software analysis. And what they are doing, like they're extracting algorithm features, having the code of the data. So having like implementation code, you can extract a lot of, let's say, like NLP features which are related to the text. So what are actually the props? So they can be used to compare different programming implementation of the algorithm, but actually they cannot be fit in an algorithm selection, on algorithm configuration, because actually the parameter sensitivity is not related to how the code is implemented, but actually it's much more related to how the algorithm behaves there, right? So this is the reason why they have been done for the source code, and they were tested in software analysis, because they can be used like, think about, you have a code, it's a text, you have some NLP features, and these features can just help you like to see like different implementation, how they differ, and maybe further you can make some correlation how these different implementation are related with the performance of the algorithm. And then we have these algorithm features, which are actually based on performance. What that means? Think about that you select like the benchmark optimization problem functions. And then you run all these algorithms, and then you are caring about the precision, the objective function value after like some convergence of the algorithm. So in our case, we can have the BBOB function, 24 like problems. We run the algorithms there. We got like what is like the precision for each of these functions. And this 24 dimensional vector, we can assume that these are like representation in the performance space. And actually what we can do, instead of doing some statistics, we can just see like how diverse are our algorithms. So how we can measure performance? We can put like some mean, median across multiple runs. We can use some deep statistical comparison rankings, some Friedman rankings, relative rankings. So it depends what we want to do. They facilitate algorithm comparison through performance vectors. But what is like the negative part of this kind of representation are they are biased to the benchmark data. So what we need to do first, we first need to do this diversity, what Gina was presenting before, like selecting really representative data. And once you're selecting, measuring this in order to make the complementarity. So if you want to see how this looks like, these are 70 algorithms on 22 benchmark problems from BBOB 2009 competitions. So we rank them, we use like this, instead of said, oh, this is the Friedman test, these are the critical diagrams and everything, like some general information. We have this, and actually we can find like problems which are similarly solvable by the portfolio. We selected 17 algorithms, but from other case, what we can see is actually how these the algorithms can have completely same average rankings, but different problems actually can contribute it to them. So you can see like the different clusters of how this algorithm performs. So these give you indication about some kind algorithm features only in the performance space. However, we can play a lot with shapely values nowadays because they are really important for explainability. So what is another idea? How we can see if these shapely values can give us also indication what is happening in the performance space. Think about that we have a task of automated algorithm performance prediction. So we have some problem features, these static features Gina presented. And then we have for all these problems, what is the target achieved by the algorithm? So we can do a simple regression model. And then once we evaluate it on the test data, we can use Shapely as a post hoc analysis procedure to calculate the importance of all those features which are coming here. And instead of thinking about the ILA features or topological landscape feature or Doe2Vec or Transop, which are coming on the input space, this Shapely representation, because Shapely can give you on a local level importance, not only on a global, we can assume that they are new meta representation because they already encoded the information about how each of these high level or these problem landscape features are related to the target variable, right? So this they can be used as meta representation. And what is coming, for example, they encode the interaction. They can be used to find similar algorithm behavior. They still depend on the selected portfolio, what we said. So first we need to have representative data and depends on the selected problem features. If I'm going to use SILA, topological landscape analysis. So, and this is some visualization with the ILA. These are different differential evolution hyperparameters configuration. They are run on these problems. And then what you can see, these are like 5 folds. We use like the local explanation, then these are some aggregated across all functions. And then we show 3 different timestamps through the optimization process run. And then you can see at the beginning, it's exploration phase. No matter, the algorithm completely different. Then you come something in the middle of the optimization process trajectory, they somehow convergence. And then when you come, like, for example, at the end, like after our, how to say, the budget, when we use the entire budget, we have to run those algorithms. All of them, these are different folds, like cross-fold validation when we are taking, they start convergence. So this shows that these shapely vectors can be assumed as a meta representations, like meta feature on a higher level that can be related to actually how the algorithms perform. And even if you go to the ground truth data, here is the paper, you can see that the algorithms which are close enough are really similar in ground performance, in raw performance, like without doing nothing like machine learning. So this provides a lot of information that they can capture like this kind of relation of how algorithm actually perform. Then another type of, when we think about algorithm features, is actually via knowledge graph. So what is the idea? The idea is that instead of doing only this tabular data, can we represent actually all these benchmarking results we are collecting in a form of a knowledge graph, like knowledge base, which is based on some ontology. So the idea is like we have nodes in the graph. Nodes represent problem instances. Problem instances are related to their problem landscape features Gina already presented. Then we run the experiments. We know what is the performance, like the precision. And then what we are trying to do, we are linking each algorithm to each problem based on the target they achieve. And why this is really useful? Because actually doing this kind of thing, we can easily learn knowledge graph-based embeddings, like putting them to some tensor decomposition, graph neural networks, and so on. So each node is a problem, each is algorithm. The benefits here, it's not only based on tabular data, but also we can find different algorithms from the neighborhood, from the graph, that actually have similar behavior, and something, if it is missing, we can encode this. And then what is really the negative point, it depends on the data which is in the knowledge graph, like typically, but what is really nice, you can further use like those kind of representation to say, think about that I have some configuration, like some hyperparameters. I don't have time to evaluate, or it's computationally costly to evaluate there. instead of doing this, I have the graph and I can say, okay, if this configuration can solve this problem in some kind of precision, so I'm doing actually link prediction in the graph in order to see if I need to continue with the experiment or I don't know. So this kind, as I said, all these features are related to the algorithm performance. Some of them, they already catch something about the problems, right? For example, the Shapely or this performance to vec, it's dependent on the benchmark suite. Here you need to know like some high level information about in the graph about the algorithm, but they still actually give us a lot of information. And even, for example, if we have this neighborhood and think about, we have all these graphs, right? What is really easy, if we do a clustering, all algorithms that have similar behavior, they're coming like together. So this kind of representing, it has a lot of power. And these are the algorithm features. And now let's see some applications. So Gina already said, okay, we have all these different optimization problems. We need somehow to make diversity, which of them will be included in the experiment. But then we said, okay, we need to take care about like which algorithm portfolio for algorithm selection, right? We would like to have complementary algorithms that are involved in the portfolio. And here it's an application. This was our probably last year AUTOML paper, which actually we make a lot of configuration for differential evolution and modular CMA. We represented by the Shapely values and the performance to vec values. We create this graph, similar approach, what Gina said, selector. We select them based on the graph. Those are only the graphs generated by these algorithm features. And then we select only one point that actually should be involved. For example, in differential evolution, we have 324 different configuration, hyperparameter settings. In modular CMA, we have 562. Then what we have done is actually we train the algorithm selector with all these configurations. So when we train the algorithm selector, we have the task of selecting the best configuration, not like algorithms. So it's more which hyperparameters are the best one. And then we can get like algorithm selection error with the full portfolio. But then we said, okay, let's minimize, let's select only representative complementary configurations. And then we try to find like to select on this way. So we use those features to select only complementary. This is like a decomposition error thanks to Diderik, which was done. And actually what we have here is actually on the x-axis, we have the difference between the portfolio virtual best solver and the virtual best solver of the full portfolio we have. And here we have the difference between the virtual best solver and the algorithm we select, like by the algorithm selection only within the portfolio. And then these are actually the full portfolio and everything that we have here. So all these different algorithm portfolios, which are defined by us, provide better algorithm selection loss. So what this does mean that we need to care about like how typically we are doing this. In optimization, we run everything, we plot convergence curves, we look in complementarity as a people, and then we said, okay, we can take like these 5 algorithms or 10 algorithms. But actually, if we think about how data-driven approach to have more representative data without putting human in the loop, then this approach, using like such kind of features, can provide a lot of portfolios when we are doing this. So for example, if I'm developing some algorithm selection pipeline and I would like to show that my algorithm selection pipeline have really I can gain from algorithm selection, I need to care about like how to select a representative algorithm portfolio there. And then we come like to the third feature. So we said, okay, this is like something related to the diversity of the problems of the data sets. This is something related with the algorithms. But what is really most important is actually what is happening in the trajectories. So the trajectory features, why? Because again, we have an algorithm, we have a sphere function we run. The algorithm can probably will see completely different search spaces of what if I run another algorithm or even the same algorithm with different hyperparameters, they are looking completely different in the search space. And now we come something we call this problem algorithm trajectory features, online features, dynamic features, whatever we can use for them. And they are much more useful for online settings. So the other features we were describing are actually offline, more if you want to do some offline analysis, but here we come to the online setting. And let's go. These are like a lot of features based on internal algorithm parameters, trajectory-based, iterative-based, dynam, more op-to-back, local optimal networks, and thousands of variants of local optimal network. And then we have a probing trajectories. And then first we start with the trajectory-based features based on the internal algorithm parameters. We should calculate them. So think about when you have modular CMA, you have an algorithm, you are running the algorithm on the functions. The algorithm has internal parameters that are changing through the optimization process. And now if you catch like these changes of the parameters, you actually are storing longitudinal time series data on which of the top you can use time series data analysis, extract different time series features that can be used to represent your algorithm behavior. And what was done in this paper is actually that these fresh features, I don't know if you are familiar, that are actually features now I know that exist these foundation models, but they are features much more interpretable, they want to say. They were executed on these internal parameters of modular CMA. It captured the behavior of the algorithm. They are really related to different models that were activated there. However, what is the negative point? Maybe we can say that lack of comprehensive comparison, because this is only TS fresh features, but also you can use a lot of time series foundation models, everything that can be executed on this data. Then we have something which we call trajectory-based LA, and Anya is here, so this is her PhD topic. She started doing this. So what is the idea? What Gina presented about the diversity of the benchmark problems. You have the problems, you do some sampling, and then you calculate features on the entire space with some sampling. And what was done in these trajectory-based LA features is actually, you have the problem instance, you run the algorithm till some time step, so some budget you are using to run the algorithm. You collected only the observed solution by the algorithm, and then actually you are calculating the exploratory landscape analysis features. And then these are trajectories features, which can be used further to do algorithm selection. And now if you think about those features, they are completely personalized features. And this is a really benefit on this for these features. Why? Because if you have modular CMA and a sphere function, and if you have differential evolution and a sphere function, they have completely different features because they are calculating based on the observed candidate solution. So you are not sampling the matrix based on some, artificial sampling techniques, but then you are doing. And then what are the negative points? Let's say you need to have some timestamp, you need to merge all data together, and then you're losing the longitudinality, how this candidate solution have been generated through the search space. And then we go to one another, which we call iterative-based LA, because you want to do time series, more fair benchmarking at the end when you are proposing new features. The idea is, again, not only a timestamp, but when your algorithm is working, for example, a population-based algorithm, all different populations which are generated through the trajectory, then you are calculating LA features, but each separate iteration. So the positive thing is that it's information about a single timestamp of optimization process, can easily be combined with a recurrent neural network, transformers, LSTM models, because actually you are caring about the longitudinality, and then you need to put something on the top. The negative point here is actually these population are not big enough to calculate ELA features, because the ELA features are really sensitive on the sample size. We are aware about this, but if you want to make some fair benchmarking, you cannot compare offline approach with online approach. We are aware about this. We still are using them to explore, if there is some benefits to use them, but these are actually all the features Gina presented about convexity, whatever, they can be actually used there. Then we have something which we call dynamic features, something done by Gina. And this is actually simple way. It works in other machine learning fields. We use the idea here for optimization. So when we have the population, we are calculating only statistics from each population. So we are doing this. So for example, we are calculating the minimum, maximum, the mean and standard deviation. And then we are using these statistics on each of the decision variable and the objective function. So for example, if we have n iteration on a problem instance of dimension d, we have like this length of a representation. And then you can see here, for example, because we are calculating this for each iteration. So if we have a three-dimensional problem, these are the decision variables. This is the objective value. And actually you can see how they are changing through the space. What is here like really nice, they can be easily used for problem classification. They can be also used for algorithm classification. They are much cheaper to compute compared to the state ELA, because ELA are a lot of calculations, a lot of like a positive semi-definite metrics, PCA, so it takes a lot of time to calculate the ELA features. But then here, like actually you have the population and you are doing only like the statistics. And then they give like really nice results compared with ELA feature, which are calculated on each iteration, the iterative ELA for problem classification and algorithm classification. What are the negative points? Limited expressiveness. They are coming with the cost because we cannot interpret. Okay, they are statistics. They show us something about the trajectory. And then think about like how your dimension grow of the function. This representation grow because we are calculating for each decision variable. But also, if we have such kind of things, we should use like a dimensionality reduction, bringing them to a lower space and then doing like whatever we want with them. So they can actually describe different trajectories. And think about if you do these denominator features, and then you try to cluster them simple, you can find like which problem in combination with which algorithm is the same behavior. Typically, it depends from the seed, right? Because the first phase of the exploration algorithm is actually the exploration phase, the first, and then sometimes with different seed, it can start on different way, but they are converging somewhere. Then we have these OptoVec features, which are learned in dynamic setting. It's again autoencoder. Think about like that these are the samples which are solved by the functions. These are the metrics here. We first scale the matrices. And then because we don't want to have over-representation, some population are really not diverse across the iteration. We keep just for training purposes with some difference between them. Then we put them through an autoencoder architecture. And then we found like this latent space are actually telling us only for one timestamp. So think about if I have only one population of an algorithm run, can I tell which is the problem and what is the dimension it's solving? So these OptoVec representations, they were tested in problem classification. They also were tested in online algorithm performance improvement prediction. So if I use them, can I predict what will happen with those hyperparameters after I don't know how many iterations to tell me if I need to stop the training or I need to switch to another hyperparameters with warm starting. And then the positive points is actually they can see only different parts. They are representing the trajectory, are crucial for dynamic algorithm selection if you want to do. And they were the first representation they take into consideration the dimension of the problem. So it's not for each dimension we are separately calculating all those features, but actually if I have such kind of, I can directly predict, oh, this is a sphere function and it's in the 30 dimension. So these autoencoders like provide those kind of information. And then we have the local optima network. They are really nice for visualization. If you have them on the presentation, people will be amazed. But to compute them, forget about them. If you want to compute them to do some machine learning, you will never get a chance to do machine learning on the top of them. What they are doing, they are like nodes represent local optima, edges represent search transitions via exploration operators. So they capture the number, distribution, and connectivity patterns of a local optima. You can see here how the stringing functions looks like. If it comes, so local search is run, local optimals are found, and you are connecting them. And then there are different variants of this local optima network because first they were invented for combinatorial optimization, and then they need to fix to continuous optimization. And then what is really important is these search trajectory networks, where nodes are not only local optima, but actually there are different states in the optimization and they doesn't need to be only local optima found. So these local optima first are only all local optimas which are found, but search trajectory actually provides much more information, like even like between local optima, what is actually the search space. They are really nice, but as I said again, they were used like for to visualize these VBOV problems. On the top of such kind of graph, if you have, you can do like a lot of graph machine learning, extracting features, and then use these features to do problem classification or something. They are really nice for visualization purposes. Or for example, if you are developing a new algorithm, they can be really easy, these search trajectory networks, to see how your algorithm behavior, how it jump from one local optima to another optima. So if you want to develop a novel algorithm, this is a really nice technique to see like what is happening when your algorithm is running. For example, it can be challenging for some problems can be challenged, right? So you should use this kind of techniques to see what is happening. However, as I said, think about, I would like for all my problems and more algorithms to generate those kinds of networks. They are really costly to compute. So they are really costly. Now, I don't know if they have like better solution, but they are costly to compute and to be involved in some machine learning experiments. And then we have the novel features which comes in this trajectory are the probing trajectories. So what they are doing, they are running the algorithm, and then they are storing the best far value of current fitness value. So in case, for example, in DynamoRep, we store the statistics, right? But they are caring about only like the best so far and the current solution. And then they are concatenating them, or simply like what this with internal parameters have been done. They are using the TS-Fresh library on the top, how the best current solution is changing longitudinally through the trajectory. And then if you use such kind of trajectories, you can also find like different trajectories of the algorithms. So you can distinguish which algorithm is run. And also you can see like, for example, because we have CMA evolutionary strategy, different trajectories, right? You can see on which problem they provide like similar behavior. So 5, 8, and 9, for example, it's really nice if you can see here that it's a mix of algorithms, and then you can see these two algorithms on which problem they behave similar, because it can be completely different problems. So you gain more information about this. And then if we think about like probing trajectories, we have like this algorithms application, we have algorithm selector. They compare with the ELA features, then potential to be utilized in the per run. And as I said, they are pretty much young, so before 1 month. There are few studies which are going now, comparing between all of them to see like how useful, if there is a gain compared to the other approaches that exist. And why we are doing everything like this? So as Gina said, we have this problem instance algorithm selection, right? For in an offline setting, for a nuancing problem, we would like to know what is the best algorithm. But now here, we would like in an online setting to see what is happening, right? We are starting an algorithm till some timestamp. And then what we want to do is actually, can we define to which algorithm or to which hyperparameters within the same algorithm we need to switch to have like better performance at the end. So these trajectory features are actually useful if you want to do per run algorithm selection. So you have like one algorithm you are starting, extracting features, trying to predict which algorithm to switch. There are like 2 papers on this topic. Probably one is coming like soon. And then if you are more interested, you can see what is happening. But now this was all about optimization, right? Now, if you think about, I just want to mention before I jump here, think about Tome machine learning and think about the diversity of the benchmark data sets. Gina presented this selector graph, how to select data that will more representative, non-redundant, right? We have done this also for NLP data sets. We have done the same approach also in time series analysis. So instead of fighting on 108 data set for univariate time series classification, you need just to like representative. So these concepts and these approaches are actually going across different domains. So we said, in our case, we extracted from the trajectory of an optimization, right? But I can tell you, for example, when you are doing hyperparameters optimization, and then you have, for example, how this changed the gradient or whatever, like these metrics, this metric can also be used like to extract a lot of features and to see what is happening like behind. there is another application of the trajectory features where they were applied to the reinforcement learning agents. So what was the idea? The idea was, okay, we have like some budget, we'll train reinforcement learning agents to find like for dynamic algorithm configuration for modular CMA. And then once we have these agents, we will make a time series features based on the action and reward. So similar to what is done in the internal parameters, and also we have these time series features. And then the idea is, can we select which instances we need to use for reinforcement learning in order to have better generalization? So first we have some time stamp, we evaluate the agents based on those trajectory represented by time series data. We selected a subset, and then we showed if we retrain the policy here, we'll have much more better result on the test hold on data set instead of training on the all instances there. So the same concepts can be applied there. So think about high level concepts. What we present is really on a low level for single objective optimization, because this is our use case. But for example, currently what we are doing at GSI is these trajectory features we are trying to adapt to active learning approaches, and then to select the best active learning sampling or whatever, like what is coming there. And then all those studies we were discussing, there is one survey article which is available on Archive. We still need to put some information for the hope to be the survey accepted. But then you can see all those features we talked today, separated in these problem features, algorithm features, trajectory features. Then you can see like in which scenario they are evaluated, algorithm selection, performance prediction, problem classification, only for visualization. In which benchmarks they have been done, BBOB, CEC, never got. If they use already established benchmarks, or they use problem generators like affine, random, different kind of instance-based analysis. So here you can see all studies that exist in the last 10 years. So all 10 years, Gecko, CEC, ICLR, whatever workshop that exists on the black box optimization. And here you can see all papers that are there. Maybe we missed something. We apologize to the authors. We missed, not with purposes, but this is something. This is the QR code. And then you can see that with these problem features, on the static features, especially ILA, a lot of studies. These are some new features that came, like what Gina said, in the last 2 years. But what we're really missing is these dynamic features that help us to understand better the algorithm behavior. Okay, I will give the floor to Gina for the open challenges, and then.
I have saved the problems and challenges for the last slide, so I didn't discourage you from this link. But yeah, essentially the challenges that we are having most often with these features are related to sensitivity. So we have sensitivity to the sampling technique, so how you sample these points. In the case of the static problem features, we have sensitivity to the size of the sample. Then we have also sensitivity to problem transformations. So for example, you take one problem, you perform some simple transformations, such as like it's shifted by 1 up, and suddenly your features are all different, and you would not expect this to happen. Then you take one sample, we calculate features, then you take another sample, features completely different. Then if you think about deep learning models, every one of them will produce different features, and these are the sensitivity challenges. Then we are going into challenges related to benchmarks, so training data for the deep learning models that we were discussing. So as I said, for like a real long time, we just had this BBOB benchmark, which just consists of 24 problems, which you can generate instances from them by applying some transformations, but these instances are not so very diverse. And the question we are always getting is like, why are you not using the BBOB to train your models? And good luck explaining to a person without machine learning experience that you cannot train deep learning models on 24 problems. there's work being done on problem generators so that we can produce some functions without human intervention essentially, but then we have challenges that are related to understanding the properties of these problems when they are not generated in a controlled setting and interpreted by humans. And also what is happening is like when we take problems generated by these generators and we compare them to the BBOB, we can see that they are wildly different. So on this plot, for example, we have 2D visualizations of the problem inside our beloved BBOB, which is the orange dots here, and then we have problems from other generators. So you can see that the problems are covering a completely different part of the landscape. And if you think about what this means for when you're evaluating the algorithms, is that you can overfit an algorithm to work on the BBOB, and then I'm really curious to see what happens to the problem in this, to the algorithm in this area. So you might see completely different performance to what is shown in the literature, because the literature is being done on the BBOB. Then a huge challenge for me is generalizability. So what this means is that you can train an algorithm selector or some problems, but then this does not really generalize to any unseen data. And what has been happening in the past decades is people were developing algorithm selection models on the BBOB, and they would have in the training data, for example, 4 instances of one problem, and then in the testing data you have another instance of the same problem, which is just a simple transformation of a problem that you have already in the training data. So, not surprising that things were working. And then when we started testing these things on out of distribution data, actually nothing is working. And the big problem here is that you cannot just publish things that are not working, or it's more difficult to publish them, so then people are not ever presenting these results, and you get the impression that all this pink and shiny. And what I want to show here is like, for example, this is an evaluation of different ALA feature groups in this easy scenario where your training and testing distributions are essentially pretty similar. This is in this axis, and then as this alpha factor grows, you're going out of distribution. And what happens essentially, this is a simple baseline which just selects best algorithm on training data. And if you evaluate algorithm selection in this easy scenario, essentially all of the feature groups are below this baseline, so they are beating. As you go out of distribution, this baseline becomes more and more powerful, and all of the features are actually above this baseline. So essentially, the model is not learning anything useful. And that was the case for the ALA features, which were developed for 20-something years. And actually, the reason why we were working so hard on this problem landscape feature to develop new ones is because we thought ALA features were not working or not generalizing to unseen data. Now what we are seeing is that none of the problem features are actually generalizing to anything. I will not go into details, but essentially this is all pairwise combinations of all the features that are out there. And in this easy setting, this is like a baseline, and everything about it is better. So you will see most features are better than the baseline. Then you go into out of distribution data, and they're all the same, basically. So those are our problems. And key takeaways, I mean, we have presented a lot of things today, and probably some of them will be useful for you, most of them probably not. The key takeaways that you can for sure transfer from one domain to another are best practices, and In this case, I would like to mention like taking care of your experimental setup. So paying attention not just to the model, but how you're evaluating it. And then there is like the problem of not hiding where things are not working, basically being honest about failures and trying to publish them, and not just focusing on getting improvements over the state of the art by 0.001 on your favorite benchmark, but trying to understand the data that is inside this benchmark and what it means to be working on this benchmark in particular, because in some cases it doesn't mean that your model will work on real data just because it's the best in this base on this benchmark. So yeah, key takeaways: experimental setup, be honest about failures, and figure out why things are not working instead of trying to pretend that they are. That's what it was.
Okay, so maybe before announcement, this everything is done like with a great collaboration. We have two of them here, like Anya and Diderik. So mostly of the work which in the last, let's say 5 years, we were doing like this together. Just to say like it's not nice. There are some things that are working. We can make some improvements, but actually what is the idea, what Gina said, we have a lot of ideas, but then we have a lot of small tabular data sets. We need help from AUTOML community to find better ways how we can handle those data. We know that we have like similar problems with the benchmarks and all these kinds of things, but we need to be aware about the experimental design. We just need to tell you that we continue working on these topics because we have fun on them. I would like to share this information, but we currently got like a big 2.5 million euro project by the European Commission. So there are like 3 PhD positions and 2 postdoc positions, which are actually available. They will start like from October, and then 2026 the postdocs. If someone is interested in meta features, and the topic is not only black box optimization, but it's black box optimization, multi-label classification, and also large language models. So we are not doing only black box optimization. So this is why the reason is automated learning. We are hosting Eva. Eva is actually currently San Antonio, Texas University. She will come to GSI together to lead like this ERA chair. And also, if someone wants to do postdoc, really nice paid postdoc in Slovenia, we have also this position, which is like a Marie Curie position. It's about learning meta features for quantum optimization algorithms. It will be available next autumn. The secondment will be done at Sorbonne University with Carola. Just to tell you, maybe Ljubljana is really small, but really nice place to live. Some of the people were there, they can confirm you on the coffee break, but it's a really nice place and you can enjoy like the city. Expect it's like the winter and autumn with a lot of rain, but actually it's still enjoyable. That's everything for us. If you have questions, feel free to ask us. And we are happy to discuss more on these topics.